Welcome to RDC. This is the future of Avatar. Before I get started, I wanted to quickly thank all of the Avatar engineers that have worked on all of the things that you're about to see, and especially Sergey Mikev, who actually put together a lot of these slides and unfortunately couldn't be here today, so I get to fill in for him. So yeah, thanks to him for sure. So my name's Adam Burr. I'm a software engineer at Roblox. I've only been here about a year, but I have 20 years experience working on character animation and rigging and deformation technology. So I'm really excited to be here and be able to apply my knowledge to this amazing software and get to know the Roblox universe and everybody here. So what is layered clothing? It's what you see here, of course, but uh, additionally, layered clothing is a lot more, and I think you've probably heard a little bit about this already. Layered clothing is really about Roblox letting everybody be whoever they want to be. So the way that we've interpreted this for layered clothing is the ability to put any clothing on any avatar in any combination to make whatever character you might want to make. So you can see here all of these different articles of clothing can be switched freely between all of these avatars, and they'll fit perfectly. So that's, to us, that's a big part of being able to be who you want to be. And there's an additional component to it that's very important to us, which is if you want to be who you are, but you also want to be able to join an experience that might be in a different world or in a different environment and become part of that environment, then layered clothing will also allow you to do that, to be able to be who you are, but also to customize that avatar for different experiences. So we're excited about that component as well. So, but I'm here to talk about the technology behind the layered clothing and some of the tools that we have developed in order to make this all happen. So I'm going to get into that now. So there's four key technology components that come together to make the layered clothing technology, which is the cage deformer, which has been in beta for a little while, the hidden surface removal, skinned meshes, which has also been available for a little while, and surface appearance. So I'm going to go through these four. Starting with the cage mesh deformer. So what is this? It's a simple mesh that you build around avatars or articles of clothing that facilitates the refitting of the garments to different avatars so that they can be swapped between any body type. And it's based on a simple mesh that you build that has a UV mapping applied to it. And the UV mapping is used to find corresponding locations between different shaped avatars that have the same UV coordinate. And this is what's used to change the shape of the garments to fit different avatars. And this UV mapping that's used is the same UV mapping that's used for pants and shirts, so it should be familiar to developers already. And there are two cages that are required in order to do this process. One's the inner cage and one's the outer cage. And you can see here the blue cage is the outer cage around the green shirt, and the red cage is the inner cage inside the green shirt. And so what do these cages do, and how does this process work? The inner cage defines the fit of the garment to the surface that's underneath it, whether that's an avatar or whether that's another garment. It defines what is the thickness between the garment and the layer beneath. And the outer cage defines what is the thickness for the next layer that might get put on top of either a garment or an avatar. So between these two layers, you have all the information you need to layer garments over avatars in any combination you might want. And here we can see some examples. And you can see how this hair has been fit from one avatar to another, and you can see it's not just being moved, it's actually being reshaped to fit the head. And any garment can work this way. Some examples. And the shoes, we're very excited about the shoes. They also work this way. And the hats, and this is an interesting one because you can see how in this example on the left, the hat, is fitting tightly over the bald head, and on the right, it's expanded out and it's fitting perfectly over the hair as well, and the hair is not penetrating through the hat. So it's a great. It really allows a lot more flexibility for mixing and matching. So when this technology first was developed, we got really excited and started playing with more and more layers, seeing how many layers we could fit together on a single avatar. And, we discovered, as you do this, the avatar gets puffier and puffier as you add more layers. And you can see if you keep adding layers, it just keeps expanding and expanding. So it kind of limits like how many layers you can put onto an avatar. So in order to solve this problem and to really improve the flexibility, we added a control called Puffiness, which allows you to compress the layers beneath the top layer so that it can appear to fit tighter than it otherwise would. And so here you can see an example without the puffiness control. This is just the default fit of this jacket over this avatar. But if we use this puffiness to compress the inner layers, we can get the fit to be much tighter. And here you can see another example. And this really becomes like actually an additional control to design the fit of the garments. It's not just it's not a hidden control under the hood. It's something that you can actually use to customize the fit. So the second technology component that I'm going to talk about is hidden surface removal. And so here you can see an interesting example of this avatar with hidden surface removal applied and sort of an X-ray view through the avatar showing actually what geometry is there. And you can see because you can't see all those parts of the sweater or all the parts of the body, we don't want to have to be carrying those around in game and deforming those as you're playing the game. So it really helps a lot to be able to remove those layers if they're not needed. So that's what the hidden surface removal does. And the way it does this is by sampling the underlying surface and firing a cone of rays off the surface and testing whether any of these rays can escape the layer above, which means that they could potentially be seen from the outside. And if you have any triangles where none of these rays can escape and be seen, then we know that triangle is safe to be removed. And this is a fully automated process that doesn't require any additional setup. Just the caging process alone is enough to get it to work. And here we can see that example again. And here we are peeling back these layers so you can see really what's left underneath. And when we get all the way down to the body itself, you can see there's just very little left from the original body on the left to the right. And that's just a huge efficiency gain for us in the engine. So the third component is skin meshes. This is not new to Roblox. It's already in a lot of live games, but we had to extend it quite a lot and add features to it in order to make it work with the layered clothing, because it's also the technology that's used to deform the garments themselves once they've been refit to the avatars. So if you're not familiar with skinning, it's a relatively complicated process, but it's basically you're modeling the avatar that you would like to deform, placing joints to match the anatomy that makes sense for that particular avatar, applying weight maps for each joint to determine how much each vertex is going to move with each joint on that avatar. And then in Roblox, animation can be applied to the skeleton, and that animation will then transfer to the skin through these weights. And it's very efficient because it all happens on the GPU. So the final component I'm going to talk about is surface appearance. And in my opinion, this is one of the pieces that really makes the layered clothing just shine and come to life. So Roblox now uses PBR, which stands for physically based rendering. And it's a standardized set of texture maps and a standard way of evaluating those texture maps in a material that's used in many different game engines and content creation software in order to define material properties. And the nice thing about using the standard means that if you develop a material in Blender or in Maya and you want to bring it into Roblox, you should get the same result in Roblox that you would have gotten in any other software. So it makes it much easier to pre-visualize. And because it's physically based, that means that it behaves very, very realistically under different lighting conditions. So it responds to lights in sort of the natural way that you would expect. So that makes it much easier to actually light. You know, if you have different lighting conditions, the materials will look the way they should in those different lighting conditions. And just because it is physically based, that doesn't mean that it has to be used to make realistic looking materials. It can also make very stylized materials. It just gives you that range to go all the way from realistic to as stylized as you might want. And so now I'll go through the different maps that are used in this process. We have the color map or albedo map. And this is just the color of the light that is going to get reflected off the surface when white light shines on the surface. So it's something that I'm sure you're all familiar with, but when you're thinking about physically based materials, you tend to think about it more in terms of the physics. So like light coming in and light coming out, not just color. And the roughness map is also relatively straightforward. The darker areas are obviously less rough and the lighter areas are rougher. So what that does is when things are rougher, they're going to have a darker highlight. They're going to have a more diffuse highlight. And as they get shinier, the highlight is going to get tighter and it's going to get brighter. And this is going to really change the look of the material and allow you to get, matte felt-like textures or glossy leather or whatever you need. And the normal map is particularly critical for clothing because what it does is it allows you to manipulate the normal of the surface while it's being shaded to basically trick your eye into thinking that there is more detail in the surface than there really is. So instead of having to add lots of tiny little micro polygons or something in order to create seams and zippers and other fine details, you can use a simple texture map that can add all these details in a much more lightweight way. And this is really important for clothing because clothing has lots of little details like hems and seams and stitching and, those things. You couldn't really do those things with geometry, and expect it to run quickly in the engine. And the final map is metalness, and metal is interesting when as far as materials goes because it actually reacts to light quite differently than other materials. Especially in the highlight, the highlight can be tinted, for example, and it just has different properties and different fall offs. So this map allows you to define which areas are metal and which areas are not so that you get the correct lighting for those things too. And so here you can see it all coming together in this nice example. A lot of detail has been added to this using the normal map and using all of these other maps. And what you can see here is as the lighting conditions change, the material and maps have stayed exactly the same, but the result reacts very naturally to the lighting the way that you would expect. So it really simplifies the process. If you have like a game with different lighting conditions, you're not gonna have to make special materials for the different conditions. And here's a great example of a garment, and you can see it's using all of these maps. There's metal, there's stitching, there's leather, there's fabric. So you really couldn't do this any other way. And here's another great example, like the knitting of the sweater. There would be no way to model that. So like having this normal map to be able to create those details is just, and the wrinkling in the sleeves and stuff is very effective. And so now I'm going to pass you over to Chen Zhu, who's going to talk about the tool side of the workflow and other interesting things. Take it away, Chen.
Thank you, Adam. I assume everyone can hear us, so I'm just going to jump start now. So, hello, developers. Welcome to RDC 2021. My name is Chen, and I'm currently a product manager on Avatar. So, earlier, Adam has given you a good taste of some of the tech that we built behind the scene. And Now I'd like to talk to you about our vision for avatar tooling, and specifically how it's been guiding our future development process for layer clothing creations. And before we start, just a quick note on the released cage mesh deformer beta. So we recently spotted some online videos where some developers try to create layer clothing using only the cage deformer and found the process a bit difficult. We want to clarify that do not worry. We're aiming to make the layer clothing studio beta available to you, hopefully the next build release, which will come with additional deform tutorials, GitHub asset support, and so on. So stay tuned. All right, so back to our original topic. First, here's a short introduction to myself. My current platform name is Late Night Diner, and here's one of my frequently changed avatar looks. I first joined Roblox in 2017 as a PM intern, and then I interned here again in 2018 for more of that Roblox awesomeness. In 2019, I graduated and came right back and have been working on avatar since. My team focuses on building the technology and tooling that support avatar appearance customization, which range from bodies to clothing, accessories, and so on. Now, let's jump into today's topic. So, before we dive into layer clothing, I want to talk to you a little bit about where we're heading. As you know, one of Roblox core values is to take the long view. And on Avatar, we constantly ask ourselves and reflect on what it fundamentally means for avatar content creation. So, today, we're known for our vision of the metaverse, where everyone can create and jump into a large variety of immersive co-experiences. Whether one wants to create a cartoony character for their games or play in a one-to-one realistic look of themselves, they should be able to do that. And to empower our community, you guys, to create thousands of engaging worlds and identities, we know we must provide you with powerful technologies that can make your imagination possible, with examples like surface appearance or the cage mesh deformer, all of which allow for an exponential increase of interesting combinations and looks. And moving forward, we want to continue building boundary-pushing technologies so your imagination won't have to be limited. Meanwhile, just giving you the tech will not be enough. We also want to make sure that all those amazing tech can be easily applied by you. We want to provide a set of powerful avatar tooling tools that are straightforward to use so you can focus on building your world, knowing the learning curve doesn't have to be steep. And that's why ease of creation became our top priority. So, what does ease of creation mean? For avatar content, to put it simply, it means great usability, where the tools are powerful to bring the gameplay experience to a new level, and developers of various experience levels can all easily access and use the tools to achieve the defined goals effectively, efficiently, and satisfactorily. And moving forward, we'd like to do most of the heavy lifting for you by providing automated solutions to many current manual process you have to do. Whether you're a pro modeler with years of experience, or you're completely new and want to start your creative journey here on Roblox, we want to make sure that whatever ideas you have, they can come true. And we know Rome wasn't built in one day, and there are lots of improvements we need to do at Roblox. And as we work on our long list of action items, we'd like to continue pushing hard on this focus of easy creation, with layered clothing being one of the examples. So today, layered clothing. So now that you already know layered clothing is awesome, next. And you thought, wow, I've got to check this out. So you probably jump into a third-party software like Blender and started building cages for some of your rigid clothing assets, hoping that it would look like this, or this. But when you import it into Studio and put it on the avatar, you've realized, it doesn't look quite right. Next. the deformation might not seem correct, where the fit isn't great, or there's some geometry penetration when the avatar moves around. It's not what you expected, but you won't give up so easily. So you went back into the third-party software and you tweaked and tweaked a little bit more. But when you brought it back into Studio again, the visual is still not right. So after a few rounds of back and forth, now you're just crying inside. Next. But do not lose your hope yet. This is exactly why we decided to build our own layer clothing editing tool. Ta-da! Next. So today, to go from rigid clothing to layer clothing, ideally, all you have to do is to just snap your fingers and voila, it should just happen. Well, although Mary Poppins isn't on my team, we designed a tool that can help you make the magic happen in just a few clicks from selection to generation. And to give you a good taste of what's coming in a few weeks, here's a quick walkthrough of the workflow. First, it's very simple. Open the plugin, and you can start by selecting a model by clicking on it in the workspace or the Explorer. And next, you can simply specify the type of the clothing item by selecting among the list. Moving forward, the next step is cage editing. Earlier, Adam showed you how the inner and outer cages work together. And here's a diagram recap. Next. In this editor tool, you'll be able to adjust both of them respectively. The tool will then automatically put the items on top of a mannequin and show you its current fitting. You can also control the transparency of the mesh or the cage for better visibility. And to edit specific cage points, you can use either the lattice editing control or the point control. We also know that as you make changes, you might want to preview the fitting at live time. So next. In the preview section, here at the bottom left, you can select a specific avatar or one that you created yourself to wear the layer clothing items you're creating to check the fit. And furthermore, you can also select some other clothing to check if the deformation is correct when all those items are layered together. If you want to check it more thoroughly, you can also move on to the animation section and select an animation to play. And this will help you confirm if there's any unexpected issues when the avatar moves around. And lastly, if everything looks great to you now, simply proceed to generating one click and voila, a layer clothing accessory asset is set up for you. So now that we've talked through the first version of this tool, you might be asking, it looks great as a first step, but what are some more powerful features and when will they arrive? So to provide you with some context, we'd like to start with the absolute must-have features and launch them as soon as possible so we can get your early feedback on what you appreciate and what improvements you absolutely urge us to add next. We do have a long list of ideas and we believe that we should do next. And we'd like to identify the most helpful ones based on your feedback. One feature that would be significant and is currently on top of our mind is automated cage generation for bodies and clothings. So you can directly get started within Studio without having to even step up into a third-party software. And you can also avoid the import process. We're working on building a great algorithm that should do most of the heavy lifting for you so you can focus on polishing the assets. Stay tuned and you won't be disappointed. And here, I'd like to thank all my team members for ideating, designing, and building this amazing tool. And meanwhile, I'd like to give a special shout out to our amazing technical artists who helped test and provide feedback throughout our development process. And if you haven't checked it out, here's the Roblox VizTech showcase where our artists use this tool to bring layer clothing into the game. It also applied other latest avatar tech to bring the graphics to a new level. Check it out. And now, a summary of what I talked about today. So in this section, We started by introducing our vision of the future of Avatar and how ease of creation is an essential foundation for us to get there. Later, we discussed how we use this principle to guide our design of the layer clothing editing tool, and what are some more powerful and useful features to come. Next. So while we want to be able to show you all the cool stuff we'll be building right now, we created some great videos that will give you good introductions to some avatar areas listed here. If you haven't checked them out on Social 27 in the booths section, please do. Also, we have some great Q&A sessions this afternoon still, so feel free to drop by and ask any questions you have. Or simply say hi.